Alex, who do you think the greatest free soloists of all time are?
Oh, it's how many am I allowed to list? It just totally depends on the criteria. I mean,
I don't know. How many are there?
I don't know. Well, there aren't that many, but I mean, to me, the names that come to mind are Peter Croft and John Bachar, but that's partially just where I grew up and you know, what I was inspired by. You know, obviously somebody like Alex Huber is free soloed 14A, so, you know, his name certainly belongs on a list of great soloists. Then you have somebody like Henry Barber from the previous generation who also was an incredible soloist. And then tons of other people doing things in the mountains. But I think for me personally, it's Peter Croft and John Bachar. Here's Peter.
You know, seeing John Bachar solo is just kind of like, he was glued to the rock. It was so incredibly smooth. It was so far away from any kind of daredevil thing. As far as like, you know, some of the historic things that John Bachar did soloing in Yosemite, when I repeated those, I just felt like I was on hallowed ground.
For the Stonemasters, soloing could almost be like a shared tradition, like something that people would do after a day of climbing where they would gather around the Joshua Tree formations and swap laps. It was not always an intensely personal experience. It was something that sometimes got shared. And it was typically like single pitches that were pretty hard. Through time, John Bachar, with his flowing golden locks and Hollywood physique, rose to be a legend that took free soloing off the deck, unlocking some of the smaller walls in Yosemite like the Nabisco Wall and Arch Rock.
He once posted a note to the Camp 4 bulletin board saying $10,000 to anyone who can follow me for a full day. He earned the nickname Mr. Norelco after the shaving company hired him as spokesperson. Close shave. Get it? That's so bad. And he free-soloed 512 in Joshua Tree for the 1980 show That's Incredible. He also had the confidence to onsite solo routes like the Moratorium.
Which I think is nuts.
No, onsite soloing the Moratorium is psycho, but I think that is something that he barely got away with, and I think he also sort of
kind of knew it.
You know, realized that was beyond what he should have done. But you know, everybody makes mistakes every once in a while.
That's true.
I kind of think he thought of that one as a bit of a mistake, but he did send.
Despite the mainstream flamboyance, Bachar had a deep vision for what our sport was and should be. He was arguably the first American climber to apply proven training concepts in sports like track and field and then alter them to fit our sport. When sport climbing came to America, John completely shunned that style of climbing, the top-down, rappel bolting, hang dogging, what we think of modern everyday tactics, which most of us use every single day, to the point that it ended longtime friendships. And in some ways, it also meant that the sport kind of began to pass him by.
John died in 2009 after a free soloing fall outside of Mammoth Lakes, California. Today, many climbers might not know his name because he never made it onto podcasts, he wasn't able to participate in films like Valley Uprising, and he wasn't able to provide mentorship for the emerging generation. In a lot of ways, John, who was at the center of the spotlight for his whole generation, has fallen into the background a little bit as history has been recounted.
Last winter, longtime climber Mark Kroese reached out. He had a box of old tapes, and he asked, would we be interested in checking them out? And of course, I was like, hell yeah.
In 2001, Mark created the book 50 Favorite Climbs, the ultimate North American tick list. The idea was to do a more modern version of the famous 50 classic climbs in North America, one that actually had good routes in it, picked by leaders in the sport. It was this beautiful book that you'd find at gear shops or on your friend's coffee table. And for a lot of young climbers, it became a must-do tick list.
Do you remember that book?
I remember 50 favorites.
Yeah, it was fun.
I actually don't remember the book that well. I remember some of the routes. I remember some of the people's, mostly because I think the routes in it are much more varied than in the 50 classics of North America. Because you get all kinds of weird ones, like Ron Kauk traversing the base of Middle Cathedral. And you're like, that's weird. You're like, what?
Mark pointed that out. He's like, he insisted that that's what he'd do. He's like, kind of weird. I was like, agreed. But yeah.
Yeah, you're like, that's definitely totally weird.
Yeah. Mark carefully tracked down so many legends in the climbing world, explained to them what he was doing, and then had them pick a route that was both classic and meaningful to them. John Bachar was one of the climbers he knew he needed to include in this book. He recorded these conversations with all 50 climbers, sometimes in person, sometimes over the phone. And last winter, he handed me a tape marked Bachar and said, hopefully it works.
Let's find out if it did. I'm Alex Honnold.
I'm Fitzka Hall.
This is Climbing Gold.
No, actually, first of all, let me get your age.
Hold on, I gotta go get a sweater.
Sure.
Kind of cold, yeah.
Sure.
I'll be right back.
Sure. So, when is it that you started climbing, like, with a vengeance, to the exclusion, or to, almost exclusion of everything else?
Probably when I was about 16.
Uh-huh.
I would start cut track practice to go out midweek, Stony Point, and then I started going like 2 times a week, Tuesday, Thursday, and then climb on the weekend, and coach was getting pissed. And then I went to college for 2 quarters, UCLA, and then I was climbing the whole time, same thing. During the week I'd go climbing and start cutting into my grades, and then I just cut it out.
So you've pretty much lived in California most of your life, huh?
Yep.
All right. Well, where you live now is a lot better than LA.
Oh yeah, I got out of there. Fucking high school graduation day, my car was packed. I went to the valley.
I went to college for 2 quarters.
Does this remind you of anyone?
Yeah. Do you mean me, or do you mean half the people we know?
At this moment, it's the early 1970s. Climbing is still deeply fringe. It's in a transition moment from the golden age where Warren Harding, Royal Robbins, and Yvon Chouinard are breaking through on these massive rock walls, and it's turning into the Stonemaster era. In California, small groups of high schoolers brought into climbing via Boy Scouts or family are starting to gather in the LA and Bay Area.
John Long and Akamazo and Harrison and all those cats, Richard Harrison. And those guys would smoke tons of weed, Long and Harrison and Akamazo, and then it was cool for them, smoke weed and go climbing. They were like tough. They were tough ass motherfuckers, man. And they do big bong loads and do the hardest routes. So they were the Stonemasters. They get stoned and they go climb. Plus they're the best climbers at that time. And fuck, back in those times, man, when me and Tobin, we're just dumb kids right at that point. And Graham too. Well, kind of started out, and those guys were already established. They were the dude. They were the guys to beat. They were putting up the hard routes and all that stuff in that area, And you'd see them walking around. We're like, fuck, there's John Long. They're just like making fun of everybody. Their chests are all puffed up, and they're fucking the big boys, And then Tobin did some weird climb that got Long to notice him. They're like, you did that climb? He goes, yeah, man, I did it. Some nerdy, geeky kid. And then Long's like, fuck, man, this motherfucker can climb, man. And then I think I did Bearded Cabbage or something, which had, I don't even think it had a second ascent. Maybe it had like 2 ascents. And I just jumped on it one day and I flashed it. And they were like, fuck, who's this guy? And he goes, you didn't do that thing. I go, yeah, I did. And then some other people saw me and they go, yeah, we saw him. And he's like, really? And then all of a sudden we're instantly kind of friends with Long. So we started hanging out and doing climbs. Me and Tobin started climbing with Long and all the big boys, Antel, Harrison, and all those cats. And Long was pretty much he coined the term and decided who was a Stonemaster or not, So, and I had never smoked out, and neither Tobin was straight too. I don't think he's ever smoked weed either. So then, they made us smoke some weed, I think, eventually. I got stoned with those guys. Me and Tobin, I think, they locked him in the car, and he would take a hit, but they rolled up the windows and smoked so much that the car, you couldn't even see the guy in the front seat of the car because it's so filled with smoke. They're like, we're gonna get this fucker stoned no matter what. We walked out, and I actually took some hits, and I'm like, this weed is bullshit. It doesn't do anything. These guys are flipped. Because first time you smoke, you don't even get high, right?
I feel like that's like a scene in Dazed and Confused where the freshman's like, I don't want to smoke weed. And they're like, you're getting in this car, son.
Dude, everything about that, I'm just like, oh, such a different world. Like, could you imagine? The thing that I was actually more struck by with all that, though, is that now when you think about the Stonemasters, you think of all those guys as contemporary, like all happening at sort of the same time. Mm-hmm. And that time was a long time ago. And you don't really, and it's interesting to hear John Bachar sort of differentiating between somebody like John Long, who was like already a hero, and then him coming along later and, them being punk kids and the other guys being established. And, there was a whole hierarchy at the time. Whereas nowadays, all those guys get lumped into Stonemasters. Like that's old school, but I guess it's just, I guess that's always true that the closer you are to something, the more granular, the more zoomed in. It's like the more differentiation between all the folks and what they're doing.
Yep.
I'm just like, I'm kind of glad that climbing has moved beyond that. It's like a bunch of dudes getting stoned and like hazing, it's just like, come on.
Yeah. And then on top of it, it's like they're playing this very interesting game with soloing. After the break, we'll find out how the Stonemasters zeroed in on soloing.
We'll be back with more after the break. I don't know if it's worth we could have a whole riff on Never Stop Exploring, because I do honestly joke about Never Stop Exploring all the time. And like with J-Star the other day at the Crag, I was like joking about Never Stop Exploring.
What do you mean?
Well, I just joke that if I ever stop exploring, I'll get fired. Like I love going to new places, doing new things, trying new ways, like, even like small scale exploration within your backyard, even like trying a new trail to the Crag, things like that. Just like I see that all as exploration. And I do think that after 20 years of consistently joking about how I should always be exploring, I think it has made me more of an explorer. It's like you fake it till you make it. It's like I just keep saying, don't stop exploring. And then eventually you're like, you know what? I think I am kind of an explorer.
Yeah. I know what I love about like that sort of like curiosity, but like what works for you?
Yeah, I think curiosity is exactly the word. I think that the idea never stop exploring gives you permission to ask questions about the world, to try new things nonstop, to like always be pushing in interesting ways. I just think that that's the best way to interact with the world. If you want to start your exploration, go to thenorthface.com.
That would be so funny if you like send in your resignation. I'm done exploring.
Well, dude, eventually I'll get too tired. I'm gonna post something on social, be like, after 25 good years, I'm tired of exploring. Now I'm just gonna sit on my sofa and watch Netflix.
Somehow I don't see that happening. You guys have been backpacking as a family, haven't you?
Yeah, we went a couple weeks ago.
How does it go? That's always there's some parents that come back scarred because they're like, my children got so hungry. They're like imploded, and then it was a disaster, and then we lost our minds. Like, how'd it go for you guys?
Yeah, it went pretty well. I think the key to successful backpacking are snacks. Snacks to keep the kids motivated, snacks to keep them from bonking, basically giving kids snacks nonstop. But then to keep her actually fueled, we could give her Kodiak's new sweet and salty trail bar, little protein bars, what we call technical snacks, like snacks that you get to eat in the outdoors, because that's what you eat on adventures.
What flavor did you guys take on the backpacking trip?
We had the cranberry chocolate chip. Seemed good.
Each bar is packed with 7 grams of protein per serving.
Made with 100% real chocolate.
And 100% whole grains.
It's very convenient. You can take it on any kind of journey. Keep your wild ones going with protein-packed granola bars. Find Kodiak Sweet and Salty Trail Bars at your local store. They're the ones with the bear on the box. Or learn more at kodiakcakes.com.
I remember the big day was Tobin Sorensen sold a 5.9. He sold a North Overhang. And he said he was going to do it, and everybody's like, Tobin, you're nuts, don't do it. That's a little bit ridiculous. And I don't think anybody had sold anything of that difficulty in Josh. We were doing like 5.8s, 5.7s. And he sold North Overhang, and it was a pretty radical moment. Long was there, Worrell, me, Graham, we're all watching, and it was fucking rad. Oh my God, that's, we didn't know what to think about it. It's like, it's kind of just crazy, risky going for it, or maybe you could bring it to a art form where you're in complete control.
It's interesting to hear him just say that watching Tobin solo 5/9 is so fucking rad. You know, you're like, oh, it's just partially, I mean, it's an interesting snapshot of the times. You know, it's like nobody really talks about that anymore. Like, when is the last time you and a bunch of your friends hung out and watched somebody solo something? You know what I mean? Like, that does not happen anymore. Like, this is just a different era in climbing.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was just talking about turning into an art form, climbing with enough control, and you're sort of like, oh, I see where John was going with his life.
Yep.
But I'll keep listening here.
And then people like, I remember Earl Wiggins used to go to the Valley, and he was starting to show up in solos at 510s. He did outer limits, which just blew everybody's mind. Most of my soloing was jockeyry, so then I started dabbling in soloing around the Valley, with we do like 5/8 cracks, reads direct.
This is all still 70s now?
Yeah, that was probably right in that range. I climbed year-round every other day for all that time. So then I started soloing like Lunatic Fringe and 5 and Dime, 10Cs and 10Ds. Kind of like what Wiggins did. He soloed outer limits, but Wiggins was a weird soloer. He was just like, get psyched up and just do one climb. It wasn't, he didn't do a circuit, and he didn't do it all the time. So my idea was that if I did it all the time and get really good at it, it would become, I'd develop my system, and I could just develop a circuit where I could go around and solo a bunch of things, 5/10s, and then one by one I'd add a little climb onto it. Maybe I'll add a 10D that I haven't done solo. So see, that's what brought me up to be able to do New Dimensions.
New Dimensions is the first 511, and it's kind of down valley at the scrappy cliff called Arch Rock. Well, it's not that scrappy. Anywhere else would be amazing, but in Yosemite, it's a little bit out of the way. But it was an important route that everybody who wanted to be somebody kind of had to do.
One day I went down there with Calc, and I just started soloing it, and I had it in my mind, but I didn't know if I was going to do it. I was just going to do the first pitch and see how I felt. Then I just kept going, and he watched. And, I remember that day, the road was closed, so we had to walk back from Arch Rock back up to the Cookie. They were repairing the road, so we walked back, and Calc was like blown away. He's like, fuck, man, that was fucking nuts. I've never seen it like it. And then we were both just, I was just in another world going, fuck, I did it. I fucking soloed New Dimensions, And,
But so it didn't freak you when you were doing it, you weren't freaked out?
no, I felt great on it. Like, that's the last move. And the last move, you reach out the finger lock and you grab a bucket at the top. So I pulled up and I pulled a Shockley, which is named for the old monks climber,
yeah.
Shockley. And that's where you grab a good hold and you let your feet slip and you go into a dead hang like you're falling. You give out a little shout out. And Shockley used to do it in the gunks a whole bunch.
Yeah, there's that route, Shockley ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so that must have freaked Calc out.
oh yeah, he said he thought I was actually falling. I was just like stoked. I did it and I felt good and I grabbed the thing. I go, and I gave out this scream. He saw me slip real fast, and he had this sweat rush. He said from his toes to his head because he thought I was actually going.
Dude, like everything about that, I'm like, what? The whole little aside about the Shockley and everything, I'm like, that is so bad. But I guess this is the nature of like 19-year-old boys like messing around, and it's like, I'm like, that is so lame. I'm so not into that.
Yeah. I know, you're like, oh wow, that is terrifying.
I don't know. You're just like, oh, what a weird story. We're like, oh, I was going to check it out, but then I was up there and I'm sending and I feel great and I can't believe I did it. And he almost puked. It's like, there's just so much emotion wrapped up in like this hardcore solo. You're like, oh my God.
I think it is like, your point. It's teenagers. Like, you're like,
yeah,
it's not fully developed. Is it?
Yeah. It's like 19-year-old boys like pranking each other, It's just like, oh, this is a bad time for everyone to be soloing.
Yeah.
And then I came down, and I was like, hey, how'd you like that? And he's like, fuck you, man, you scared that shit out of me. So we walked back, and we kept walking, got to Cascade Falls, and there was Jardine's car. And Jardine was working on the Crimson Cringe. Jardine had been working on the Cringe for like 40 fucking days. He was up there all the time. So we go, hey, can we get a ride? And there's no cars on the road. They had gone down there before the closure, and they had their car, so they were going to drive back. Otherwise, another couple miles at Honnold Bridge. So I go, hey, can we get a ride? And they're like, yeah, we're leaving. So we're sitting in the back, and Jardine's like, well, what are you guys doing down here? We didn't have no ropes or anything. We're just like cruising around, walking around. And Cal goes, oh, Bachar free soloed New Dimensions. And Jardine just started laughing because he thought it was a joke. He thought Cal was joking. Like, sure, yeah, right. No one's going to solo New Dimensions. And so then we started laughing too. Because we were laughing because they thought it was a joke. And then Jardine looked back and he goes, no, really? And then Cal looked down, straight face, and goes, yep. And then Jardine he fucking just turned white, and he couldn't even talk.
Wow.
So we got back to the valley, me and him. And I remember we stole a bottle of tequila and some orange juice, and we sat behind the bar and we were getting drunk. And the people slowly, I didn't tell anybody, I just wanted to see what would happen. And people started telling other people, that's the guy who fucking sold New Dimensions. And they were looking at me like I was like somebody from a mental hospital or something, kind of like, there's the guy. Kind of like the way people treated Earl Wiggins.
Right.
When Wiggins was in the valley, people go, there's the guy who did Outer Limits. And everybody would kind of look at him like, fuck, that dude's freaky. Look at him, man. He's got those big, thick glasses, man. He's weird. And you just get this vibe from people like it wasn't thought of as an accomplishment. It was thought of as kind of like almost just an insane guy looking for attention.
God, feels like attitudes around soloing haven't changed much since the 1970s.
I was curious. I was curious to see whether you related to that feeling.
Yeah, like the total curiosity.
Yeah.
People are like, what a weirdo. That's crazy. But it's just a little different now because the way information spreads is so different.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, I remember that same experience with soloing Moonlighter, soloing Astroman and Rostrum and stuff. Some of my first things, like before we really had smartphones and before social media and all that, when it really was like word of mouth where a couple of your friends find out because you were like climbing with them or whatever, you talked to them on the phone that day or something. And then it's like sort of spreads over the next week or two where people are like, wait, you did what? When? That's crazy. And you're like, oh yeah, I guess.
John's talking about soloing New Dimensions. New Dimensions is the first 511 in Yosemite. I mean, like put yourself in the context of the 70s. Like now we look at that and you're like, right. It's like, I remember doing New Dimensions and being like, oh, that's funny. Like I would have thought this would be nails hard since it was like the first 511 and it's not that bad. Totally. And you're like, oh, okay, it's all sort of there. But it had an aura around it. Like that route, because it was the first 511, had an aura around it. Then like for some young person to come along and then do that, like what kind of impact do you think that would have had on the valley?
Well, honestly, I don't know. I mean, I showed up in Yosemite so much later that it's hard to know what like the aura around New Dimensions was. But I suspect that it's probably similar to the aura that was around Astroman when I showed up in the valley. And nowadays, I feel like that's the aura that surrounds Freerider. Because now, Astroman isn't really considered cutting edge anymore, but Freerider is considered like pretty rad. And so I suspect that New Dimensions was probably like the Freerider of its time, sort of big, sort of hard. You're like, oh, that seems like a real test of modern climbing.
Does Astroman get free soloed?
No, I think it's only been done by Peter Croft, Dean Potter, and me, I think.
Yeah. And
then there are like rumors of like, Werner Braun maybe did it once, but won't say he did. And, like there are some rumors that like random people maybe have done it, but there's no way that more than 4 or 5 people have done it, ever.
Is there anyone even like on your radar that's like soloing hard? Like, have you gotten like a call from anyone ever?
I don't think so. I mean, not that I know of. I mean, people ask me sometimes like, oh, has anyone, soloed the Freerider? And I'm like, not only has nobody soloed the Freerider, but nobody's even taken any of the first steps down the path to feel comfortable soling the freerider. You know, it's like, because to me, all the first steps would be soling the rostrum, soling Astroman, like soling a couple of the other classic things in Yosemite. I mean, you don't even hear about people soling New Dimensions. Like, I mean, it must get done, you know, occasionally maybe, but I don't know. I've like literally never heard of anybody doing it. Like I sold New Dimensions a long time ago, just, you know, as a nod to history, because you're like, oh, it's classic, it's historic. But it's not like I ever climb at Arch Rock because it's like way down valley. You're like, why would you bother? And so I like went down there just to take the box, just you know, paying homage to John Bachar basically. I don't think I've been back to Arch Rock since. You know, it's like whatever.
It's funny. I feel like when I did it, I think in like one of the sort of chimney sections, there was like this giant like sprig of poison oak coming from the back of the chimney, and I was like, how the fuck do I avoid this thing? It was so annoying.
Did you just climb through it?
Yeah, I just climbed through it. I mean, it was like, oh god, I go do it, but I was like doing my best to like not just like reef my body through it or whatever.
Not rub your face through it. So you're like, oh god.
Yeah.
But that's why you don't climb down valley. It's like, oh man, that sucks.
I was working on relaxation and concentration and flow and technique. So I wanted to pick things that there's not going to be any surprises for me. There's no weird move. There's no this or that. And then my goal was to, like, every time I do the climb, even though I've done it before, okay, I've done this climb 10 times, 20 times, whatever, the next time I do the climb, I'm going to use 1 calorie less. That was my whole philosophy. So I'm going to make it, even though I was smooth last time, I'm going to be 1 calorie smoother this time, 1 calorie more efficient, you know. And so I looked at it that way. Even though I was doing a circuit, it doesn't get boring. I mean, as soon as you're 10 feet off the ground, you're not bored anymore, because soloing makes you break down the climb move by move, you know. So you make one move at a time, and each move has to be a solid thing. It has to be smooth. Never scrape your foot, no foot dragging, no foot slips, nothing. Everything is an intentional move, and it's planted, and get the rush out of your head. A lot of people, when they get in a solo situation, they tend to kind of get a little nervous, and they try to rush through the climb. So I would work on just slow down, stop, look at the ground, look around, look where you're at, go back to your move. You know, just try to develop total relaxation, you know.
So the Nabisco Wall is this 400-foot shield of rock that defines Cookie Cliff, which is a small but incredible crag in Yosemite. If you look at the first ascent lists of routes on the wall, there's names like Jim Bridwell and Henry Barber. There's a lot of history. Nabisco Wall starts with Waverly Wafer, which is kind of then a Burley 510, now called 511. It leads to a ledge, and you can go 2 ways. The original way leads up Wheat Thin, which is this tiny flake that's bolted. And then the most classic way is to step left into one of the best crack pitches in Yosemite, the 511C Butterballs.
First time I did Nabisco was with Tobin Sorensen, and now I think it was we did the 6th descent. And we just showed up. That was like, I don't even think I knew calc at that point. Showed up, and Tobin always had to pick the climb that was, you know, to talk. I mean, the route to do, you know, the route to repeat. So that was it. Nabisco Wall was it. You know, it had been done only 5 times or something. And so we showed up, and then here's these 2 kids from Southern California. I didn't really know Bridwell, didn't know any of the cats in the valley at that time. We were just the Southern California kooks. So me and Tobin show up. He led the first pitch, Wafer, took a fall. Then I led Wheat Thin, okay, no problem. And then I think he fell once on the Butterfingers. And when Tobin fell, it was spectacular, because he didn't put much gear in. He would take a big fall and just go for it, completely fucking go for it. So he took a big fucking fall on Wafer. I think he must have fallen, God, I don't know, 30 or 40 feet, because he was pumped at the top part, and he couldn't get any gear in. So Tobin's way of thinking was, if you're pumped, you just start climbing faster. So anyway, we made it, and as we're on the last pitch, we looked down and there was like 25 people watching, and everybody was there. Bridwell, Chapman, fucking Wunsch. Well, maybe Wunsch was there. All these Valley heavies were there watching this thing, and they're like, "Look at these cats on Nabisco." And we got to the top, did it. We got back down, and everybody congratulated us. They're like, "Fuck, who are you guys?" Because they didn't know who we were.
That's cool.
We had made it.
That's so interesting to imagine everybody in the valley standing at the bottom watching.
Yeah.
You're like, what? Didn't people have anything else to do? And
Yeah.
like, what were they all doing? And why are they all at the cookie that day? Like, that's so weird.
Yeah, it's like I almost get this vision of like somebody like driving by and seeing that and then being like driving to the cafeteria and being like, guys, everyone down to the cookie right now, or like it's so.
Yeah, it's so weird though.
Yeah.
Because I also wonder when you hear stories like that, if it's a little, I don't want to say exaggerated, but it's like, because people always tell stories like, he's telling the story 20 plus years later. And it's just like, what he remembers is like feeling like the man after they did it, and being celebrated by a bunch of folks. And you're kind of like, I wonder how many folks are actually there. That'd be like a bus, like, the parking only accommodates like 8 cars. You're kind of like, well, how many people were down there? We'll be back with more after the break.
We've both been taking AG1 for many years now. It's like part of your routine. It's awesome. But they've busted out of the routine. What's the big news?
The big news from AG1 is that now they have more than one flavor. They've added citrus, berry, and tropical, so you can have whatever AG1 you want. Which, honestly, I don't really mind eating the same thing all the time, but I'm a routine person. But I'm sure for the right person, that's going to be a big deal.
Oh yeah, no, I love it. I mix it up. It just never the same. It's pretty sweet.
Oh, I can't imagine mixing up. I mean, the whole point of a morning routine is that you just do the same thing every day. But, I guess now you can do it with different flavors.
The flavors in AG1 are derived from plant-based sources with no added sugar or artificial sweeteners.
If you've tried AG1 or any other health drink and didn't love the taste, you should definitely try some of these new flavors. Your daily health drink just got more flavorful. If you head to drinkag1.com/climbinggold, you'll also get a free welcome kit worth $76 when you subscribe, including 5 AG1 travel packs, a shaker, canister, and scoop. That's drinkag1.com/climbinggold to give the new AG1 flavors a try. Thanks to AG1 for sponsoring this episode of Climbing Gold.
Dude, you ran up a mountain today, and I feel like it's 1,000,000 degrees in Vegas.
Yeah, I did run up a mountain today. And actually, it's slightly less than 1,000,000 degrees today, but it is incredibly hot in the desert. And yeah, I have actually been drinking LMNT on every run. I've been trying to do one run a week and one mountain adventure week, and I always take LMNT in my water. I normally do 2 soft flasks, so 1 liter of water, and I split a pack of LMNT between the liter. And honestly, I think it's for the amount that I'm sweating in the desert, it makes it makes a lot of sense. I think it's a smart way to make sure that I don't bonk.
What flavor do you put in your bottle?
I use any flavor really, but I have been using the lemonade salt this summer. It was a seasonal flavor, though now it's just been made permanent, which is great.
Because it's the best. It's the best one.
Yeah, but honestly, I think it's nice to mix them up, because if you're using the same thing on every run, it starts to feel a little, I don't know. It's just nice to have different flavors. Get a free 8-count sample pack of LMNT's most popular drink mix flavors with any purchase at drinklmnt.com/climbinggold. That's drinklmnt.com/climbinggold. Find your favorite LMNT flavor or share it with a friend.
The next big thing was to flash butterballs, and Calc flashed it. He was the first guy to flash butterballs. He worked out like a motherfucker for it, worked out new dimensions, and we did all that kind of stuff. And he had the idea, he goes, I want to try to flash butterballs. And I'm like, fuck, that's rad. Because,
Pre-camming devices.
What's that?
This is without any camming devices.
Oh, yeah, this is before camming.
No, but nuts, not pins, right?
Right, nuts.
Yeah. Okay.
So he trained, and fuck, I remember the day he did it, fuck, he was just super in his own zone, his own world, and he went up and fucking did it. He fucking flashed it, and people were blown. They're like, that's sick. Because at that time, it's like, people were thinking, there's no one's ever going to flash butterballs. That's fucking way too hard of a climb to be flashed. We're always one-upping each other. We're always right next to each other. You know, I'll do something he can't do. He do something I can't do. It goes back and forth. So we were like brothers, and in that way we push each other. So then I go, fuck, I gotta flash butterballs now. Fuck, I can't let him do it, and I can't do it. So then I trained. I think it was probably, I don't know, a week or so later, I went up, and I was fucking nervous as shit, too. I'm like, fuck, if I don't flash it, he's gonna be the man, and I'm gonna be the can. So, hero or zero, you know, and then I flashed it, too.
So you were the second person to flash butterballs.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. So we were both in the flash club, and I think we were the only guys for a long time to flash that thing. So we were, it's like a club or something, the Butterballs Flash Club.
Everything about this just feels so different than climbing now. I think part of it is that there were so many fewer routes in the valley that they just had such a reputation around them. Mm-hmm. Because now it's like, who cares about Butterball when there are like literally an infinite number of routes out there that you can do, and they're more your style, less your style, sport routes, trad routes, boulders. Like, there are basically so many more ways to sort of prove yourself now.
Yeah.
But I guess back then as a 19-year-old kid, you're just like, I want to be the man. I'm going to do the one route that everybody knows.
Yep.
There just like weren't that many hard routes to choose from.
So what did you do to train? Obviously there wasn't climbing gyms, and there wasn't even backer ladders then, right?
No.
Or is that how you invented it?
Yeah, I made that thing just as a portable training device that you could take around with you. Yeah, I just started studying kinesiology and stuff, working the muscles that get used in climbing, I just started developing my own ideas on training. I do pull-ups and fingertip hangs and fingertip pull-ups. I mean, back then, like, no one was really doing fingertip hangs, interval hangs and stuff like that. And I just kind of came up with the idea from track intervals. You do, we're going to do 12 440s today at 80% effort, and you do, 3 sets of 4, and you take a half-mile jog between each set and stuff like that. So I started thinking that way and applying those kind of approaches to climbing training.
That's cool. It's kind of like you and Tony Anero were sort of the early, I guess you before him, but sort of the people that figured that out early.
Yeah. He was close. He didn't quite have the total package understanding that I did, but he was close. He didn't have the kinesiological knowledge that I had. So he was doing a couple things I thought were kind of dumb.
It's just so funny. He's like, Tony Nero, he was trying, but kind of dumb. You're just like, it's such a classic. Like, I don't know. That's, yeah.
The character comes through in this tape.
Yeah. The character definitely comes through. That's so funny because, Tony Nero is also sort of well respected as one of the early leaders in training and did some of the hardest grades in the world. And, it's like, I'm sure he probably was training in ways that are now considered suboptimal, but to dismiss it all is like, oh, he was kind of dumb. You're like, dude.
What kind of things did you learn from your kinesiology? Like, was that the concept of rest days and stuff like that? Or?
Well, just like basically follow the SAID principle, S-A-I-D, specific adaptation to imposed demands. All this stuff came from the Russians in the 60s, basically, power training. Got way into studying the Russian power system, learning difference between white fiber, red fiber, what they do, isometric versus kinetic movement. There's a lot of kinesiological facts that if you just know about them are going to help you train it. Like you can't train muscles that function isometrically with kinetic training. So hand squeezers aren't going to do you any good for building finger strength. And you see people with hand squeezers today, doing kinetic exercises to develop hand strength when your muscles, your forearm muscles in climbing are used isometrically. And you just grab and latch on. You're not like pulling up with your fingers or anything like that. Your calves are used isometrically. Your lats and your arms are used both ways. You pull up, and also you have to be able to hold on isometrically. So I invent exercises to develop those capabilities. You know, you can do 200 pull-ups a day, but the tension in the muscle is still the same. And if you want to develop power, you have to increase the actual tension inside the muscle. And then it adapts, you know, it adapts to the imposed demands on it. So, you know, it's better to do pull-ups with weights than it is to do 600 pull-ups a day. You know, it's like you see people doing laps around the wall in the gym and stuff, and it's just really, really counterproductive because you can't control the resistance and duration of exercises in a gym. You know, you have to get to the hang board, you have to start tallying stuff down, pull-ups with weights, one-arms with weights, things like that. You know, basically I kind of work on my weaknesses. Anybody should, really.
It's interesting hearing him talk about kinesiology because, like, even the terms have changed. You know, I mean, this is what, 40 years old or something, or 30 years old, and I mean, not that I really know much about it, but I think he's talking about fast twitch and slow twitch muscle fibers and stuff, like red versus white. But I'm like, oh, I've never heard red versus white. You know, it's like you think fast twitch and slow twitch, and
yeah, just in terms of the terminology, you mean?
Yeah, just the vocabulary. But that's kind of what's interesting. It seems like the general training principles haven't really changed that much. It's like if you want your fingers to be strong, you work on your fingers. You know.
At the end of the day, I would train, and I had a schedule and a training diary, the whole thing, and I would graph my progress in certain exercises. I'd say the two principal ones were like the 2-arm pull-up with weight, just gauge my 1 rep max, and fingertip hang on like probably a 3/4 inch edge with weight, and see what kind of weights I could hang with. And I'd keep track of that and, you know, constantly try to increase my 1 rep max.
So 1 rep max, meaning the maximum amount of weight you could have hanging from you and still do 1 pull-up?
Well, no, you know, I would separate, you know, like some people do fingertip pull-ups with weights, but that's kind of dumb too, because you kind of split the exercise between your lats and your fingers. So as soon as you do fingertip pull-ups with weights, you can't put as much weight on as you can hang with to do a pull-up. So, like, I used to be able to do 1 fingertip, this on a 3/4 inch edge, because with weights I would train with a comfy first knuckle edge. You know, I could do 1 pull-up with 100 pounds, and on a bar I could do a pull-up with like 140. You know, so that tells you something right away. If you want to maximize the tension put into the lats, use a bar. Forget about the fingertip edge. And then with a hang, if I was just doing a hang, fingertip hang, and I didn't have to do a pull-up, you know, I could use 150 pounds or something like that. So then I could increase the tension in the tendons more that way. So, you know, just like basic power training principles, you know, isolate the muscle that you want to work on and increase the tension, you know, over a long period of time so it gets stronger. So combining the exercise, it doesn't really maximize either in that situation, you know.
Right.
It's funny to hear him say it's better to do pull-ups with weight than to do 200 pull-ups a day, which is a lesson that I learned myself, you know, over the years. So I'm like, as a kid, I was doing 150 pull-ups before bed. And then as you get older, you're like, wait, that doesn't actually do anything for your climbing. And now I do a handful of 1-arms at the end of a session and basically call that good.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of the equivalent is doing weighted pull-up or something. But it's like in a whole training session now, I do like 9 pull-ups, you know, but they're just very hard.
If flashing the Nabisco Wall was something that was groundbreaking, soloing it seemed to reset the bar for what was possible in the sport.
I told Mark Chapman, he's the only guy I told about it. I go, hey, I might solo Nabisco today. You want to take pictures of me? And he goes, okay. And I go, don't tell anybody, because I don't even know if I'm going to do it, but I don't want to get, you know, freaked out about it. So he's like, okay. So I went down there in the afternoon, me and him, and he set up a rope and hung out up there. And he shot pictures of me soloing the thing, you know, soloed, you know, the wafer. I got pictures of the whole thing. And I got to the ledge, started butterballs, and I was intentionally, if I was going to solo, I was just like, fuck it, I'm going to do the butterballs version. I'm not going to do weak tin, you know, that's just too nuts. In fact, I don't even think I've ever sold wheat thin. I think it's just it's easier to sell with butter balls than wheat thin, even though wheat thin's easier, just because of the security factor.
Right. Yeah, that first move getting to the wheat thin flakes, little.
Yeah, not only that, you're underclean. I mean, your feet are just, if your foot slips, you're done. You're gone. The butter balls, at least if your foot slips, you got a finger lock. You can still hang on,
Yeah.
I mean, your heart will be racing pretty good if that happens, but... So anyway, I got there, I sat, meditated for like 10 minutes or something on the ledge, and just fucking tried to zone out. Threw my shirt off and fucking went for it. I mean, it's just absolutely perfectly vertical, perfectly flat, and you're exposed as you can get for, you're not that high off the ground, you're only 100, 200 feet off the ground, but man, it's just for position and exposure is just fantastic climbing, And Butterfingers, you got a little bit of trickiness with the face moves, where you start with a couple of locks, and then you kind of have to do a couple face moves and stretch out. Pretty cool moves for a crack climb. Usually cracks are pretty linear, so you're just stuffing your feet and hands in the crack. But you get to, spread out on that part when you have to reach over to the right and get into the hand jam. And then you got your hero climbing finish. It's just 5'8" or 5'9" hand crack, and you're just feeling like king of the world because you're cruising on 5'9" hand jams 300 feet off the ground on this absolutely bitchin' flat wall, and there's nothing to the left and nothing to the right. And as far as that goes, God, it just doesn't get much better than that.
As positive, he's talking about the top out to butterballs. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because that's exactly the way that I've described the upper pitches of some routes. Mm-hmm. Like everything he's describing just feels like a smaller version. It's like all within one pitch instead of within one giant route. But, I've talked about that, like the top pitches of El Cap or the top pitches of the Freerider are like pretty locked in hands, and you're at the top of the wall and it's epic and the position is so cool. And you're like, oh, it's so incredible.
And you've done the hard part. Yeah.
Yeah. You're done with all the crazy stuff and now it just feels fun. I don't know. It's like exactly the same experience, same thing, but just on a different scale. Yeah. Like it seems like modern hard soling. You're like, you just take all the stuff from the Stonemasters in the 70s and you just like expand it. Yeah. You just make it much bigger.
Yeah. I thought it was it's funny because I was like, oh, should I include it? But I was like, I feel like you would recognize that feeling.
I describe that as like the victory lap, and you're like, oh, I've basically done the hard stuff. Now I can just enjoy the position, feel like a boss and just have a good time. And it's just fun. It's funny to hear him remember so much detail from that 20 years later. I mean, he probably climbed it so many times in his life, so I guess he remembers the pitch really well.
Yeah.
But, it's like one random pitch in the middle of this random cliff. Yeah. You're kind of like, man.
Do you think that's like a function, though, of just the as they're pushing boundaries, right? In the whole Stonemasters, like they're pushing boundaries in terms of like the free climbing ability, and then, Bachar, Tobin Sorensen, they're sort of pushing it in terms of what people can solo. And, they grew up climbing at J-Tree. It's mostly single pitch stuff down there, right? And then even there, they're going to the smaller crags in Yosemite. They're not thinking about this on the El Cap scale size. They're thinking about the Cookie and Arch Rock and all these places. Do you think a function of that is just that somebody had to do the small things and like remember every little detail of a route before our community could get to thinking about doing something like Astroman next?
Yeah, for sure.
Like it takes that. Like you can't just jump ahead. Like someone actually has to kind of do the in-between.
Yeah, it's like somebody has to solo the single pitch 10C. Like when he was talking about Earl Wiggins soloing Outer Limits, it's like, yeah, I would now consider that a super easy 5'10" hand crack. You're like, oh, anybody gets solo that. But like at one time that was considered cutting edge, and that's what led him to solo some of the harder things. And, that constant process of one-upsmanship and sort of progress, everyone trying to push the sport a little bit in a little direction. Yeah, I mean, for sure, you can't be soloing the Rostrum Astroman if you haven't climbed to the Cookie and Arch Rock and all those other places. I mean, particularly back then. Nowadays, you probably could because you could climb other routes that are kind of similar, but that's because those routes didn't exist back then.
While Long may have been the bard, the rambunctious hype man for climbing in the 1970s, Jim Bridwell was the general, the the climber with the greatest vision for the sport and the direction that it needed to head in. He also had an eye for bringing young climbers in who had talent and helping them mature. And by mature, I mean eat a lot of acid.
Couple last questions. I was hoping you could give me like a quote on Bridwell. He's in the book, and I'm writing a story about him as well. And it'd be fun to get a.
Yeah, shit. I went to Patagonia with him and Graham. He freaked the shit out of me. I don't know. He's a cool guy, he's a philosophy major. So we always got along intellectually and had really cool conversations. But climbing with the guy was he was like the captain. He always had to be the fucking lead guy and mark out orders and tell you what to do and stuff like that. Kind of back in the day. I don't know. To me, he's kind of like Miles Davis. Miles Davis maybe wasn't the greatest trumpet player, but he saw what he wanted to fucking do, and he get the guys that could pull it off. He's the guy. He'd pick out, whoever, Charlie. He'd pick out his Coltrane. Coltrane was nobody, and he's like, that guy. He's got the fucking technique, and we're gonna play this kind of music, and the fucking shit would turn into magic, So it was later years, that's what Bridwell was. He picked a team that he would see could pull it off, He was the guy everybody wanted to knock off, Fucking me and Calc walked in. Warner never led shit for a long time, but also Dale was kind of freaked out, but when all of us we're still trying to prove ourselves. But Bridwell was the guy putting him up, at that when we first got there. I don't know. I think for his time when he was there, what was happening before him and stuff like that, I'd have to say he's probably one of the most visionary guys he's ever got to the valley as far as free climbing goes. Maybe he wasn't the greatest free climber. He's pretty good, but he was seeing things for the future of free climbing that no one was even close to looking at, He was just seeing steps ahead of everybody else. He was thinking, damn, 20 or 30 years from now, people are going to be doing this. And, people were like, Bridwell, you're gone. That's never going to happen. But he was able to see so far ahead that he would, that showed how he picked lines too. He picked these climbs that were just visionary, And he maybe didn't pull them off all the time, but he always picked the lines that were going to be and are now the classics, the standards,
I kind of wish he'd used more concrete examples for Bridwell's vision.
Yeah.
I'm like, what did Bridwell imagine people climbing in 20 years?
Yeah, no, that's sort of the bummer too. It's funny that there's some more Bridwell tape, but not all the recordings were perfect. He actually went on an expedition with Bridwell and I think Mike Graham, and it's this wild story. And Bridwell brought a sheet of 50 tabs of acid for like a month-long trip to Patagonia. And like Bachar and Graham, they were like ferrying loads in, and they said that over the course of the month, they split 2 of the tabs of acid, and Bridwell ate all the rest over the course of a month. So there must be some vision in there. Yeah.
That's a lot of acid.
Yeah, no, I think that he was sort of thinking that it was that ability of Bridwell to say the nose will happen in a day, and sort of like see the power of the free climbing stuff, or even, I don't know, there's just the hotline, stuff like that, where he was never climbing at that 512 level, but he was finding the routes.
Was hotline a Bridwell?
Yeah. So Bridwell put up hotline, but then Bachar and Kauk had to come and free it.
Yeah, okay. Hotline's supposed to be the first 512 in the valley, and that one is one that really lives up to, it's like, it's so hard for 12A. You're like, oh, dude, like they really took 512 seriously when they established that thing.
Yeah.
It's like, geez. I don't know.
Overall, like, what'd you think of this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's a cool blast from the past. It's like cool to remember John that way. I don't know, it's funny because he's just like, he did so much for climbing, and then in other ways, like he held climbing back so much.
Yeah.
With the traditionalism and just the reluctance to change.
Yeah.
What a character. What
happened to John in the end?
Well, yeah, I mean, the sort of sad irony is that he fell to his death free soling. They're kind of like, whoa, that kind of negates some of the. I mean, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's like basically, I mean, he basically lived a long, rich life. It's like he had kids, he had like family, and played a saxophone, and like lived to middle age anyway. Mm-hmm. And then it had kind of a serious car accident, and then people claimed, when he did fall and die, that like a hold could have broken, or that he could have had some health stuff going on from the car accident, or who knows. I mean, people always look for an explanation when there's a terrible accident like that.
Yeah.
I mean, particularly with somebody like John Bachar, who was so good at soling that it's just hard to imagine him just falling off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's too bad, but
yeah,
it's just interesting. It's interesting to contrast John Bachar's life to Peter Croft, because I feel like Peter is still climbing, still training, still psyched. He's still been like putting up new routes and writing guidebooks. And, obviously he's not climbing at the level that he, he's not pushing the limits of the sport like he was in his 20s, let's say. Mm-hmm. But he's still very much a contributing member of the climbing world. Mm-hmm. He's like still sponsored and still going to events, and still just a big part of his community. And I'm kind of like, I just find that really inspiring, like a real lifer. Mm-hmm. And I feel like John Bachar just didn't quite nail the graceful transition the same way. Mm-hmm. He was kind of like shouting into the wind for so much of his climbing life, like trying to fight against sport climbing and fight against any kind of modernity. Mm-hmm. And you're like, that's kind of too bad.
Yeah.
Like, it's just interesting because now, like with climbing in the Olympics and people climbing V17 and all that kind of stuff, you're like, would he be into that? It's like, would he be excited about the changes, or would he just still be yelling that people should be, that people should be yo-yoing routes or whatever?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like you realize you get something like this and it's just so frozen and locked in time. And the reality is his thinking probably did evolve.
Yeah, it probably changed a little.
And like Instagram didn't exist for him to be like, oh, I've thought some things, or you just sort of realize that somebody's thinking gets locked into place because of these few bits of media that exist out there.
Totally. I mean, and that's the thing. I think the danger for us running an interview like this is that we're just perpetuating some vision of him that's locked in 1996 or 97, whenever he did this interview.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, yeah, presumably he grew and changed with time too. But are there any examples of him ever saying you know what, I was wrong to chop bolts and to fight against sport climbing?
I don't know. I should look it up. I'll see if I can find anything. But
I mean, he did sort of wind up sport climbing a little bit, like in Owens River Gorge later. But.
Yeah, I think he did,
But even there, he was more known for soling the routes than he was, it's not like he was establishing sport routes, really.
Yeah.
I guess the Bachar Urian is his one sport route, and it's only got 2 bolts on a 500-foot wall.
Yeah.
It's a very sporty sport route.
That's a good way of thinking of it. The time capsule-ness of this, I thought, was pretty neat, though. That's my one thing, where it kind of feels like you're opening it up and kind of imagining what it was like to ditch class to go to Stony Point.
Yeah. I mean, and especially just to hear his voice, 10 or 15 years after he died. And I think listening to this kind of stuff, it's easy to make you feel sort of nostalgic for the golden age, or, back when everything was new and fresh in Yosemite and there's so much opportunity, and it's a small group of people constantly pushing themselves to do the next big thing. It's like, oh, it's so dynamic and exciting. It's like, there's still a lot going on in the valley, but in some ways the scene now, the community is so much bigger that there just isn't that sense of constant progress, constant pushing, because there's tons of different people doing tons of different things all the time.
Yeah.
Did you see Katie Lamb just did a V16 in the valley, which is, maybe the first woman to climb V16, and a super hard route that people have tried forever. It's super rad, but I guarantee there weren't 25 people standing at the base being like, oh my God, I can't believe she did that. Even though it's arguably the hardest that a woman has ever climbed,
Yeah.
I bet she did that by herself, one spotter, freezing cold, nobody around.
Yeah. Do you think it's because there's some sort of like inverse relationship to like size of community and power of community. You know, like as it just gets so much bigger, you're not worried about, well, who are these kids and should they be, you know, like,
Totally.
like there's like, you kind of like lose that a little bit because it just, there's too many people.
Yeah, the climbing world is so much bigger now. You sort of expect some random 19-year-old to show up and on-site your project or do the hardest thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if next season in the Valley, some 19-year-old shows up and frees El Cap in a day on site, you'd be like, oh, you know, you'd be impressed, but you wouldn't be flabbergasted. You'd just be like, oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like that's, you know, that sort of thing is to be somewhat expected now. Yeah, it's just a different world for climbing.
Congrats to Will Moss, who, right after we recorded this, became the first person to flash El Cap in a day. That's 2025 in a nutshell. We can barely keep up. Progress is always continuing. A huge thanks to Mark Kroese for reaching out and sharing this recording with us. It's so deeply appreciated. You can still find copies of his 50 favorite climbs. It's classic. It's really cool. There's so much history and psych and awesome imagery in those pages. Thanks, Mark. Hey there, have you heard that you can get Climbing Gold ad-free? I know a few of you have been asking, and so this year we've made it an option. We are calling it Climbing Gold Unroped. Get it delivered to all major podcasting platforms. You don't have to listen to any ads. We are grateful to our sponsors though, but we get it. You can sign up. There's a link in the show notes or on the website. It's super easy to do. Climbing Gold is created by Duct Tape Them Beer. Alex Honnold is our host. Our production team includes the talents of Skylar Perwins, Marco Seiler Gonzalez, and Evan Phillips. Our creative director is me, Fitzcall. Today's music by Alabassi, Shaky Faces, Our Many Stars, Celesta, Brendan O'Connell, and Evan Phillips. Will Taylor handles our ad sales. Our executive producers are Jonathan Retzik and Ben Endy for RXR Sports, and Lizzie Hendricks and Becca Call for Duct Tape and Beer. Thanks for listening.